You may or may not know this about me, but one of my bachelor's degrees is in English literature. It's this piece of my background that makes me want to interrogate the spaces where human thought and action interact with the natural world, and today, more generally, with science. If you try to name a scientist, you might be able to come up with a few real ones, who are probably mostly men and mostly white, but you'll almost definitely be able to name a few scientists from fiction as well. So today, I'd like us to explore the portrayal of scientists in fiction. I read both the Goethe and Marlowe versions of the story of Faust, or Dr. Faustus, while I was still in undergrad, so I'd been thinking about this idea for years before I ever started this channel. But the longer I exist in the science communication space, the more I think about it. Since movies, TV shows, and books shape most of our understanding about topics in which we are not experts, it stands to reason that the portrayal of scientists in these media could be really important for how non-professional scientists perceive people in the profession. That becomes rather concerning, though, when we start to examine the pattern of scientists portrayed in fiction. I mentioned Faust a moment ago, and he serves as one of two figureheads for a large subset of scientists in media, the scientist as the villain. If you're not familiar with the story, Dr. Faustus is a scientist in search of ultimate knowledge. Realizing that he's limited by human capabilities, he makes a pact with Mephistopheles, the literal devil, in order to acquire more knowledge. As you might expect, this strategy backfires, and Faust, who is both the protagonist and a kind of villain in this story, meets an unhappy end. Faust's desire for knowledge and discontent with complacency drove him to recklessly go against the dominant religion of his time. His story is so infamous that the term Faustian bargain has come to be a synonym for a deal with the devil. It's apparent to us as the audience that Faust is a cautionary tale against wanting more knowledge than we can have, at least according to certain religions. The other scientist you can probably think of, who is both the protagonist and the villain of his own story, is Dr. Frankenstein. Frankenstein becomes obsessed with life and death, wondering if he can reverse the process and bestow life on dead organisms. His pursuit backfires, though, when he is so horrified and disgusted by the humanoid figure he brings to life that he allows his creation to escape. Once free, the creature all too soon learns that humans can be cruel, and Frankenstein is cursed to pursue the creature as the two are locked in a cycle of revenge. While Faust made a deal against the will of the Christian God, Frankenstein is punished for his hubris in playing God. In both stories, it is the pursuit of knowledge that appears to be sacrilegious and therefore abhorrent. Frankenstein's final words are literally, "Seek happiness in tranquility and avoid ambition." None of the authors of these scientist stories tried to hide what they were trying to say. Science and the pursuit of knowledge are dangerous and fly in the face of goodness and religion. While Faust and Frankenstein might be some of the earliest and most famous examples of scientists as villains, there are tons more. There's Dr. Crane, who becomes the villain Scarecrow in Batman, and Doc Ock, a villain in Spider-Man. There's the infamous Dr. Strangelove, and Dr. Jekyll, whose experiments on his own body chemistry transformed him into the monstrous Mr. Hyde. But the argument could be made that several of these characters, as well as many other fictional scientists, weren't intentionally trying to be bad or evil, they just lost control of their creations. However, the moral of the story to the audience is still usually that science is dangerous and goes against the laws of nature and religion. I bet you can think of a lot of well-meaning scientist-turned-villains in fiction, too. Consider Shu Tucker, known as the life-sewing alchemist, who is desperate to please military leaders. There's also Dr. Alice Crippen, who creates a virus that cures cancer but also leads to humanity's demise. Or even Dr. Henry Wu, who just wanted to see if he could bring dinosaurs back. In every case, the audience, as well as many other characters in the story, are left wishing the scientist had just left well enough alone. So why do so many popular stories throughout the years portray scientists as villains? I don't want to harp on it because I like my comment section troll free, but this whole archetype does seem to have at least something to do with religion. The leaders of many religions have historically tried to cast science as evil because science seeks to discover explanations for real-world phenomena, a market that most religions don't want to share. So even though it sucks, this is probably where it all started. My second reason for the scientist as villain trope is fear. I made a long list of ne'er-do-well fictional scientists and broke it down by discipline. Unsurprisingly, the two most represented scientific disciplines were human biology/medicine/genetics and physics/engineering. I hope you've already got some ideas as to why medicine and genetics would be scary for people. This totally feeds into the whole playing God idea, but it's also scary on its own because these scientists are messing with people, and we can see ourselves in their victims. None of us wants to wind up with scissors for fingers or to become a zombie or an evil super soldier. The physics/engineering representation is also interesting, though perhaps a little less obvious. Fictional scientists in this group run the gambit, from working with teleportation or time travel, to lasers or other powerful rays, to androids or mech suits, so there's nothing we can immediately point to that ties all of them together. The thing that stuck out to me about this group was the prevalence of nuclear physics and engineering. Nuclear material and radiation became prominent bugbears after the deployment of nuclear weapons during World War II. We can see it most clearly in long-running comic books like the DC and Marvel universes. In both cases, many heroes and villains got their superpowers by somehow interacting with radiation. The mutation-causing potential of radiation was terrifying for people, and so scientists working with these materials became scary as well. It's interesting to note that several of these comic book stories have been rewritten and updated over the years, so modern versions of these stories rely less heavily on nuclear radiation and focus more attention on genetics, a modern fear. For example, Peter Parker was originally bitten by a radioactive spider, but modern Spider-Man got his powers from a genetically modified spider. So there we have our answer. Physics and engineering scientists and popular media are scary because even though their work doesn't directly involve humans, it's the effects their creations can have on humans that scare us. Whether it's mutation from radiation, possession by an alien from the 8th dimension, or transformation into a housefly, fictional physicists and engineers can cause just as much damage as any of the other scientist villains we've explored. While doing research for this video, I stumbled upon a really cool book that explores a lot of these ideas in greater detail. I've put a link to the book down in the video description, but I highly recommend you check out Rosalind D. Haynes's book, From Faust to Strangelove: Representations of the Scientist in Western Literature. Obviously, I don't think science is inherently evil, but I can understand and respect the idea that science can be dangerous if it's not well understood or carefully applied. However, scientific discoveries are just tools with no inherent goodness or evilness, and the pursuit of knowledge does not deserve to be demonized. I'm hopeful that future popular media will include scientists who are at the very least neutral characters, and at the very best, some of our new heroes. After all, science is probably how we're going to solve the majority of our current most pressing problems. So what do you think? Do these portrayals of scientists in fiction cause people to fear or mistrust real live scientists? Who are your favorite scientist villains? Do you have any favorite fictional scientist heroes? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. If you liked this video, don't forget to like it. If you didn't like this video, please share it with someone who would. And if you'd like to support the Roving Naturalist, remember to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon. Then go check out my Patreon page. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like more positive experiences with scientists in your life, you should come join me on Nature Check, where myself and a bunch of scientist friends have a great time playing video games and TTRPGs. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.